Hello. Today I'm going to talk about just general anatomy review. Tomorrow you will have another recorded lecture. And again, looking for feedback. If you like these recorded lectures, let me know. If you hate them, let me know too. But um, today we're going to go over body systems for anatomy review. And then tomorrow you guys are going to learn some different body movements. So yeah, just take notes right now. Like I mentioned, they need to be on lined paper. They should be handwritten. Don't forget to write your name clearly at the top of them. And then also making sure that you're including the title of the notes. So you don't need to do this part. You can just say introduction and anatomy review. And then also making sure that you are uploading these notes before the end of the period. So if you have any questions, obviously feel free to email me, but we're just going to get started. All right, so what is human anatomy? Human anatomy is the systemic, so it's a multi-dimensional, I guess, approach to studying the human body. It's the study related to organs, their common functions, basically the study of body processes and how these organs work in order to get the body to function correctly. So last year we did talk about anatomy. We went through different body systems and we focused a lot on the medical conditions associated with it. So you guys will be going over sports medicine medical conditions in a few weeks, I believe. But just know that this class is going to be highly focused on the muscle body system and the skeletal body system. So the musculoskeletal system. And eventually when we do get to do hands-on learning, I will start going over each section of the body when it comes to like the ankle, the knee, the hip, shoulder, elbow, wrist. It's just right now things are going to kind of be a little out of order. But anyways, so just in general, the word anatomy just means to cut up. It's the study of basically dissection. So it's the science of, your structure in your body and then the relationship between these body structures. So how does the cardiovascular system function with the respiratory system? How do your muscles work with your skeletal system? Because they all work together. And then obviously the nervous system is the one that's controlling everything. So just some body systems. We didn't talk about some of these, and I'll go over it more, but the integumentary system is your skin. Skeletal is obviously going to be your bones. Muscular is going to be your muscles. Nervous system is going to be your brain, spinal cord, and the nerves that branch off of that. You have your endocrine system that is responsible for a lot of your hormone control and hormone production. Cardiovascular system, obviously your heart, and then the blood vessels that come off of it. Your lymphatic system, this one is something that we'll talk about when we get to like phases of healing. Your lymphatic system is the reason why you have swelling when you do get injured. So that's an important one, especially in the field of sports medicine. Respiratory is obviously going to be your lungs, digestive, stomach, intestines, urinary, reproductive. We didn't talk about this last year, but I'm sure you guys are well aware. So those are going to be the female genitalia, male genitalia, ovaries, testes, and the urethra, which is where you urinate from. All right, so integumentary, this is something that we didn't go over either in medical careers. It's one that I deal with in sports medicine. I'll get to it in a moment. But the integumentary system is your skin and then the structures derived from it. So it's not just your skin, it's your hair, your nails, your sweat glands, oil glands. And then the purpose of this is to regulate your body temperature. So like I said, we'll talk about medical conditions that are specific to sports medicine, like heat illness. And that's something that's obviously occurring or could occur right now because the weather is really hot. I saw that a high school soccer player actually died this past weekend due to most likely heat stroke. So I think I talked to you guys about it last year, but just a reminder, heat stroke, your body when you're hot normally sweats. Somebody who has heat stroke, their body temperature is so high, it's usually above 104 degrees, which is very dangerous. But their body temperature is so high that it starts to not be able to regulate its temperature anymore. So someone with heat stroke won't sweat. Sweating is something that is a good indication that your body is functioning correctly. So if you're ever outside, it's really hot and you're still sweating, take that as a good thing. I mean, you obviously still want to make sure that you're being safe, but it's when your hot, dehydrated, that sort of thing, and you're not sweating, that's when it kind of becomes more serious. Your skin also helps protect your body. It helps to relieve stimuli. So what that means is your body or your skin can tell if the temperature is too hot or too cold when you touch something or even in the environment around you. It helps you determine the pressure of things. So if you were to touch someone, you know that when someone even is gently touching you, there are pressure receptors in your skin that let you know that someone's touching you. So even if it's a light touch, you can tell the difference between like someone lightly touching you and someone not touching you at all. And then you have your pain receptors. So obviously in the medical field, you're dealing with people oftentimes, I think I've said this several times, on the worst day of their life, they could be in extreme pain. So you have your pain receptors in your skin. And then it also helps to eliminate any waste products. So again, sweating is your body's ability to eliminate some of the waste products that might be building up. You have your skeletal system. So this is one of the ones that we'll focus on a lot. Hopefully you remember some of the bones, but your bones also have what is called cartilage. This cartilage covers your joints, and it's intended to basically make it so that your joints are smoothly articulating. So articulation means that when they're coming together, or they're connected. So let's say you have cartilage in your knee, that is called the meniscus. Basically, the cartilage makes it so that your knees, when you're applying pressure, that sort of thing, they're not grinding on each other. So there's several different things that can happen to like someone's meniscus, but that's something where if, let's say, they tore their meniscus, then they're going to have issues. They're going to have pain because at that point they don't have that smooth surface anymore. It's just kind of like bone on bone. But the function of the skeletal system is to support, obviously protect your body. You have your rib cage that protects your organs. You have like your pelvic bone that's protecting your reproductive tract. You have your vertebrae protecting your spinal cord. Obviously, it also allows in body movements. So you need muscles for you to have the ability to walk, that sort of thing. And then you also have cells in the bones, and these help to create blood cells. So your red blood cells are coming from your bone marrow. Muscular system, you have three different kinds of muscles. So you have your skeletal muscles, is probably what you think of when you think of just muscles on someone's body. But your organs also are made of muscle. These are your smooth muscle tissue. If you ever hear like visceral, I don't know if you would hear this, but I've heard it, like visceral region or like organs. They will often call them like visceral. So just know that a lot of your bigger organs are actually made of muscle tissue as well, but it's smooth. It's not the same as your skeletal muscle. Also remember your skeletal muscle is voluntary. So what that means is you have to formulate some type of thought in your brain in order for you to actually be able to do a movement. Whereas things like your smooth muscle, your cardiac muscle, which is your heart muscle, your brain just does it. So it's involuntary. So you're not telling your heart, please pump, contract, that sort of thing. And the skeletal muscle, even though it's called voluntary, it's not that you have to tell your brain, okay, now I'm going to flex my wrist and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. Your brain still does it in a pattern, but you still have to formulate that thought in your brain that I want to walk, to that part of the room, or I want to pick up this cup, that sort of thing. So obviously it's allowing for production of movement, helping to maintain your posture, and then also helps to produce heat. So it also aids in the ability of like homeostasis. So if you're cold, you'll start shivering, and that can help produce body heat as well. All right, nervous system. This is probably, and I know I'm going to sound like a nerd, one of my favorite body systems. It's one of the body systems for those of you that had me this past year, and we were in distance learning. We didn't really get super into nervous system. It's one of my favorite things to teach you guys. But yeah, so the nervous system's obviously your brain, your spinal cord, your nerves, and then also your sensory organs. So we did talk about that, I believe. You have like your eyes, your nose, ears, all of those are allowing you for different special senses. Helps to regulate, obviously, all of your body activities. If you do not have function of your brain, there's obviously going to be a lot of issues with your body functioning correctly. But it helps to produce that muscle contraction. it allows for reduction of the glandular secretions. What that means is like your sweat glands, it basically allows for those secretions to work correctly. So again, when someone's having heat stroke, their brain is having issues too because it's not able to achieve that homeostasis. So then it's not able to regulate the glandular secretions in your sweat glands. And then that's probably why the person's not able to sweat anymore. But it is obviously the most important system for sustaining life. So for me, that's where I have probably the biggest issues when it comes to athletes, coaches, parents, like concussions. Concussions are probably my least favorite thing to deal with when it comes to me as an athletic trainer, just because it's an invisible injury unless the person's obviously showing outright symptoms. So somebody can have a concussion. It could be, let's say, like a more mild one. They're still concussed and they can still, say that they feel fine and then they get cleared by a doctor, so forth. So it's just, I always try to tell the athletes, one, I'm not trying to keep you out of practice or games. That's not my job that's not what I got into the job as an athletic trainer. But your brain is the most important part of your body. If you had a broken arm, you wouldn't try to run out into a game. I mean, maybe some students would, but people need to protect their brain. So I think just maybe one thing you can get from my class is if you have a head injury, take it seriously. You guys are young. Your brain's the most important thing in your whole body. Endocrine system. So I think we talked about this a little bit, but it's the hormone producing, I guess its main purpose is to produce hormones. So you have your pituitary gland, your thyroid gland, and your pancreas. I know we talked about your pancreas when we went over diabetes, and we're going to talk about that too with medical conditions because I have had athletes who have been diabetic. They're typically type 1, but you could also be type 2. But just know that the endocrine system is responsible for regulating that. Thyroid gland is very big on like your metabolism, things like that. So people can have like an overactive thyroid, underactive thyroid, and then that can affect like their ability to utilize nutrients, things like that. And then it also allows for chemicals in the blood to target the organs of the body. So like if we're talking about pancreas, you have sugar in your blood, and then your pancreas produces insulin. So it basically allows for that balance. So if your pancreas isn't functioning properly, like someone who has diabetes, if you have high blood sugar, there's no insulin production. Again, we'll get into this in more depth when we go over that, but just know that it's responsible for just regulation of a lot of the organs. You have your cardiovascular system. We have talked about this obviously last year. Just knowing it's your heart, but it's also the blood that is in the blood vessels and your blood vessels. So your arteries, your capillaries, your veins. Just a reminder, your arteries carry oxygenated blood throughout your body, and then your veins carry the deoxygenated blood back. And then you have this little area between the two. So you'll see this blue is supposed to be the veins. This red is the arteries. How they then have that gas exchange is in this little webby area called your capillaries. So that's where that carbon dioxide oxygen exchange occurs. So it's oxygenated, then they get to this area, and then it carries that deoxygenated blood all the way back up to the heart, comes oxygenated, and so forth. And then also helps to regulate temperature. So like I said, lymphatic is important when it comes to like healing processes, but just know you have lymph nodes throughout your body. These are really important for protecting against disease. It's basically like your immune response. You have your tonsils, which are in the back of your throat. Your spleen is an organ that's on the left side of your body, which is, again, really responsible or really important when it comes to immune response. So the swelling, things like that happen when you get injured, it's your body trying to protect itself. So the swelling, it's trying to bring in nutrients, but sometimes your body can overprotect itself. And then that's where you have like the severe swelling and that sort of thing. Respiratory system we've talked about. Obviously, it's going to be your lungs, but it's also going to be your pharynx, your larynx, your trachea. Just remember your larynx is known as your voice box. Your trachea is oftentimes called your windpipes. You might say, oh, it went down the wrong pipe. Because you should also, if you're eating food, it shouldn't go down into your trachea because then that leads to your lungs and that's not a good thing. But it helps to supply oxygen, helps to eliminate carbon dioxide, and then also helps to regulate your acid and base balance. So you might have heard like a pH balance, maybe you haven't, but it helps to basically regulate those two things so that your body's not too acidic or it's not too basic. Digestive system, we did talk about this too. We went over it with nutrition as well. But you have your salivary glands, which so like the saliva that you're producing in your mouth, it's your liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. And so the functions of this are just the breakdown and absorption of food, and then how your body actually utilizes it, and then also the elimination of solid waste. So you'll consume something, and once you start chewing it and it starts to go down your esophagus, once it gets to your stomach, it starts to break down and change shape, and then your liver breaks it down, or not liver, sorry, liver aids in the breakdown. But once you get to the small intestine, then it breaks down further, and then eventually gets carried to the large intestine. And by the time you actually are eliminating it, it definitely doesn't look anything like, or at least it shouldn't look anything like what it did when you consumed it. Urinary system is often called the renal system, and that's because with medical terms, kidney is renal. So just keep that in mind. That's why it's called that. But it's your kidneys, your ureters, bladder, and urethra. And so the function is to produce, store, and eliminate urine. It helps to regulate the volume and chemical composition of blood, and also fluid and electrolyte balance. So if you are dehydrated, you might notice that your urine is darker, and that's just because you're lacking certain nutrients when you're dehydrated, and so your urine is excreting different. Whereas like if you have more water in your body, your urine's going to be lighter, and that's usually a good indication that you are hydrated. But also keep in mind too that if you're taking a lot of supplements or vitamins, that can also affect what the color of the urine is too. So like I know I take vitamins every morning, and this might be TMI, but the first time I go to the bathroom after that, like when I go pee, it's like bright yellow. And that's just because, not one, because I'm dehydrated, but because of the fact that I'm excreting extra vitamins and minerals. Reproductive system. So this is going to be the testes and ovaries. So these are your reproductive organs. We will not really focus on this too much in this class. We're going to talk about some injuries that can happen in sports medicine, primarily with males. I'm not going to get into it now, but just keep in mind that, yeah, for me as an athletic trainer, I don't deal with this too much other than if there's maybe an injury to any of those areas. And then your functions, obviously, to produce reproductive cells, and then transport and store these cells. So your sperm and your eggs. All right, we're going to actually stop there for today. Like I said, we will go over body movements tomorrow. But if you don't have any questions, make sure you finish these notes, make sure you scan them, and then upload them to Classroom. And that is it for today. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.